Hello everyone, I just got off what was the most exciting call of my days so far, and I wanted to share one of the key insights that I took from it, at least, as we were having this conversation. So what we're going to talk about in this video is how when you change your body, you change your world. And you've probably heard the kind of new agey fluff before of like, change your perception or change the way you're looking at things and the world changes. And the problem with that is there's no practical strategy to do that. At least not in the way they talk about it. Now, some people will go ahead and do the kind of mental mind games. They'll play sort of in Never Never Land. Others of us have work to do, and we need strategies that we can actually put into place. So what I want to do in this video is talk through some of the concepts behind this phenomenon, and then help you figure out some of the strategies that you can actually put to work. Because the truth is, when you change your body, you change your world. And that is not a metaphor. That is not some frivolous little thing that you should put on a poster. Unless you want to put it on a poster. Shoot, someone make me a motivational poster, please. I'll pay you for it. Why not? But anyway, what we want to talk about is how when you change your body, you change your world. Now let's start with a fundamental assumption. You have been shaped over the course of your life by everything you have ever experienced. What that means is anything that has ever happened to you, any injury, any amount of stress, any loads that your body has carried, your body has been shaped by all of the physical forces that have been put on you over the course of your life. What this means is if you sit in a chair every day for 20 years, you're going to be chair-shaped, right? That part hopefully is pretty simple. If you spent a whole lot of time around here, you've heard me talk about the SAID principle. It stands for Specific Adaptation to Imposed Demand. It is the fundamental rule of physiology, right? So that's the physical factor. I see lots of ha-has. Someone loves this. Man, I'm glad I can make you laugh. I'm feeling a little feisty, so we'll really go for it today. So you've been shaped by all of the physical experiences you've had over the course of your life. Along with that, you've been shaped by all of the emotional forces, because the two factors that shape us more than any other as organisms, as a species, the two forces are gravity and culture. These two things, it sounds simple, but it is a profound idea that we can limit this to gravity and culture. Those two forces shape you more than any other. Think, there is the ever-present pull of gravity, right? All of the cells in your body are consistently being loaded by this downward pull, and they're adapting to find better and better means of organizing within that downward force. Now, along with that, you have the forces of culture. You are a social organism. Every human is. You look at any other animal on the planet, and we have a relatively enormous period of social dependency before we reach what we could call a sense of maturity, of the ability to autonomously make decisions for ourselves. So your social environment has shaped you quite a bit as well, your cultural environment. We can even look at cultural norms of how we greet each other, cultural norms of who speaks when and who keeps themselves quiet, and whatever the case may be. Ladies, masculine-oriented societies, you know what I'm talking about, right? And even guys, too. Guys are shaped by cultural forces as well. Don't cry, toughen up, man up, all of this bullshit, right? So if you get an understanding of how you have adapted to culture and how you have adapted to gravity, you can make a profound change in your life. That's assumption number one. Not even an assumption, just a fact is that you've been shaped by all of the experiences over the course of your life. And if you're like most people, I'm willing to bet that you were not raised in a perfectly curated environment by transcendent enlightened monks who attended to your every need in the most perfectly intelligent way, right? You've suffered through a lot of shit over the course of your life. And by virtue of the fact that you're alive watching this, you've adapted somehow. You've survived. You've made it through. You've got at least some level of function. That's a good thing. Sorry, my mustache is going a little crazy today, kind of tickling me. Lots of laughs and loves for that. Great. Love it. So you were not raised in a perfect environment for you. You had to compensate and come up with adaptations that got you through, that were good enough to keep you alive. And then maybe that's as far as they got. Thanks, Lindsay. I love it too. Not gonna lie. I think it's probably my best feature at this point. So anyway, you've got this whole repertoire of habits, of adaptations, of behavioral patterns, ways of carrying yourself, of speaking up, of taking up space or not. And these have been curated for you by forces largely outside of your control. And by and large, they happen unconsciously. They bubble underneath. They get you by without you deliberately thinking about it. And the problem is when you get stuck in those patterns, it really does shape your view of what's possible. See, the way you perceive the world, the way that your nervous system, your whole perceptual apparatus works, is you take in sensory information. And of course, that's filtered through your physiological situation now, the way your body is, and it's filtered through all of the cultural biases, all of the social roles and games you've played over the course of your life. Case in point, folks who are obese compared to folks who are of, quote, average, normal weight, whatever the case may be, there's not a good word for that, but folks who are significantly heavier will perceive that mountains are taller in the distance. There are a number of studies that look at this. If you're asked to estimate how tall a hike is up a hill, folks of heavier weights will assume that the mountain is taller. They will actually perceive it differently than folks of a lower weight. So just the way that your body is right now is changing the way that you engage in the world. And God, this guy that I hopped off on the phone with earlier, he decided he wanted to take the leap, dive in, hit the ground running. So I'm thrilled for what the coming months are going to show for him. But he's in a situation where he is really overweight and he's really self-conscious about that. He said, look, I'm not an idiot. Like, I was raised in an abusive, neglectful household. I had to pay very careful attention to cues around me, cues within my environment. He is hyper vigilant about these things. And because of that, and along with his weight, he's really self-conscious about even leaving the house. So go figure, his world is shrinking around him simply because of the physiological adaptations his body has made in response to stresses in the past, right? He said he knows that all of the diets he's tried in the past, they haven't worked because of the cortisol spikes. He's got this massive stress that his body can't quite process. And we know that when you have this cortisol spike, the easiest way to tame that cortisol spike, the biggest craving is like sugar, right? Sugar, like all sorts of stuff. So he's created this padding for himself. Quite literally, he has created a buffer between himself and a world that was too intense to cope with. Rest assured, your body is adapting to the world around you, for better or for worse. Now, if you don't get a handle on that, what you end up with is a life of obesity or chronic pain or depression or anxiety or any number of things that seem so out of hand. But really, they're just adaptations to gravity and culture. Now, if you can get a handle on this, if you can bring awareness to how your body is making these changes, to what stresses you're adapting to and what you can do differently in response to those stresses, you are much better equipped to give yourself a much better run for the next year, next decade, for the next half of your life. See, when you change your body, think for this guy, for example, if he could feel safe in his body, he said he hasn't felt safe in his body for 10 years. Now, this is not uncommon. The folks that I work with typically have had kind of a rough upbringing, whether it was obvious or whether it was a little more insidious. They're in high stress jobs and they tell me look, I'm just exhausted at the level of my bones. I am tired and I ache in my bones. And when you feel that way, go figure, when you don't feel resourced and able to deal with the world, guess what that does to your perception of the world? Of course it's overwhelming in that case. Of course you are overwhelmed if you don't feel capable of dealing with what's around you. But here's the thing. If you can see it in the world around you, you are capable of dealing with it. If it truly was too much for you to bear, if whatever stresses you're up against were too much for you to cope with, you would be oblivious to them. Think of all the things that people repress, all the things that people tamp down and forget about. They gloss over and seal it up in the dark corners of their psyches and in the nitty-gritty corners of their bodies. That's not the case for you if you can see this stress in front of you. So I get that you've got a lot of stress. I get that the business you're running is demanding. I get that all of the work you're doing is taking its toll. And the fact that you can see that now means that something within you is able to cope with that. Again, it's a physiological rule. If it were too much for you to bear, You wouldn't bear it. You would withdraw even more. You would become catatonic. You would become oblivious. You would become neurotic in all sorts of ways. If you can see it, you can cope with it. And it's a matter of mustering up your internal resources, renegotiating how it is you use yourself and the world around you in order to process that more effectively. You fucking got this. You've got it. But it's just a matter of learning how to use yourself more effectively. I've got just the right amount of coffee to keep this going. Like I'm on. Let's party. So if you've got questions related to this, drop them in the comments below and let's talk through it. So I see Lindsay loves it, Shiloh loves it. Good. I'm glad this is clicking. Let's roll with it. So again, questions, comments, type them in. We'll hit them as we go. But look, the case in the situation we're dealing with is that you don't know how to use yourself effectively enough to really process these stresses, to deal with this situation. Your perceptual filters that, again, have been shaped by all of your life's experiences aren't letting you see more effective ways of using yourself. I was on a call with another woman today, and she framed it really beautifully. She said, it feels like this is going to be like a quantum leap in myself, like a quantum leap into a much bigger sense of self. And that is exactly what it is. Because if you can shift the way that you see the world, if you can change, not just change your perception, change the world. If you can actually change the apparatus with which you perceive the world, you see new opportunities all around you. So what does that look like? Well, what can you change about the way that you're sitting and standing right now? I mean, truthfully, a really simple example, but one that I think you'll help click this into place for you is, if I sink into this and I think about all the stresses that I've got, all the shit that I've got to do, all the emails that I haven't had time to really get to at this point because I'm packing up my life. Oh my God, and I've got to drive across the country and I need to move and I need to pay the movers and That's clearly not a very well-resourced place for me to engage with the world from, right? And let's look at it in the lens of gravity. What I'm doing here, again, gravity being one of the two primary forces that shape us. What I'm doing when I collapse, I'm collapsing into the pool of gravity. This is not good. This is basically me telling gravity and the world and everything that I've given up, that I'm just barely making it through, right? There are three fundamental ways we can relate to gravity. And I'll talk through these theoretically and realistically. If you want to get a handle on it, we really ought to put this into practice for you. So let's talk. Shoot me a message and let's make this happen. So collapsing is one of the ways. Not very effective. But realistically, sometimes that's the best you can do until you learn a more effective option. Because let's be real, you're doing the best you can given what you know how to do at this point. But if what you know how to do isn't enough to get the outcomes that you want, it's not your fault, but you do have to take responsibility for learning a new way of doing it. We need to parse out blame and responsibility. It's not your fault. You're not to blame for gravity and culture and the shit that you had to go through. Not your fault. But right here, right now, you have a responsibility to learn a new way of being, a new way of doing, a new way of engaging in the world around you. So look, maybe all you know how to do is collapse. I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders. I've got all of this. I just want to curl up and I want to hide. Fine. It's one way of doing it. Not the most functional, but some people will scrape by doing that. Now, another way, what people often do instead is they'll prop themselves up, right? We can collapse or we can prop. And I can prop myself up and say, I'm not going to collapse into that. I've got this going on. I'm going to puff this up. Or alternatively, I can prop myself up this way. And this kind of way of doing it is often I don't have the resources to cope with whatever bullshit's going on here, but I need to pretend that I'm interested or pretend that I'm engaged. So here I am. I'm going to prop myself up. This isn't engaged. Whenever I'm teaching, whenever I'm leading a workshop and someone's doing this, I offer them the invitation, hey, give up for a minute. Just lay down on the ground. Your body is telling you that it is not resourced enough to be here and really engage at this point. So lay down, withdraw into yourself until you find that you are able to actually be engaged. There's an organic ebb and flow to this. There is a time to collapse. And when you're doing that, don't just prop yourself up or go prop up through a stick up your ass. give up for a moment if what you need to do is give up. But learn how to navigate your body's signals, right? In doing so, not only will you change the loads that your body is carrying, but you will actually change the way you perceive the situation around you. This is like, I do not want to be doing this Facebook Live right now, but like I said I was going to do it. But look, I haven't been doing that this whole time. It's because I am engaged. It's because I feel resourced. It's because I feel capable of talking to you with like this level of fervor, right? Something in me is like feeling the sense of support, and I'm able to use myself more effectively to talk through this stuff, right? So what's happening right now, you can even hear it in my voice. When I'm talking through this here, I am supported, I am connected, I am grounded, and I am resourcing myself effectively. As soon as I collapse into myself, you can hear how my voice comes up to here. And like try as I might to try and sound like I'm having a deep voice, like something in my throat is forcing. Same as when I'm propping myself up here. Or when I'm propping myself up here, there's a break in my wholeness. There's a break in the cohesion of myself. But when I take a moment and I really find the ground underneath me, when I take a moment and withdraw, not to the point where I need to say, and like fill the space, but when I give myself a moment to withdraw and to really take the time that I need and to really make sure that I'm engaging in the way that I want to engage with you, and man, I am fucking ready to go at that point, right? So look, just the way that you're carrying yourself in gravity, pay attention to what your spine is saying about your ability to be in the world, your ability to cope with the stresses. Do you find that it really is too much to bear? Or that you've got to kind of hold yourself up or prop yourself up or chin down, shoulders back, all that bullshit? Or can you find that beautiful, that exquisite moment where your internal resourcing is just enough to help you engage at the level that you want? David says, I see some of my staff do this when they're overwhelmed. Yeah, man, if you've got a team to run, if you've got staff going through this, like do them a favor and just tell them, like, lay down. I was working with a guy who was running a gap year program for high school students. It was like a wilderness program. And he said, man, a lot of my staff, like, they're younger guys, they're in their teens, all of this. And they've got this sort of thing going on too. Or they've got this sort of thing because they're trying to look good and like they've got it together. And I was like, man, if you see your staff doing that, extend the invitation to them. Don't make them lay down, right? Because you're not going to be like, lay down on the ground and rest. But offer them the invitation. Hey, give up. Or do this. If you take nothing else from this little video, ask yourself this question every day. You could live into this question for an entire year and you'd be a very different person at the end of this year. So write this down on a piece of paper. Write it down on 365 pieces of paper and live into this question for a year. What's one thing I could do for myself right now that would make me feel just the smallest bit more supported? What's one small thing I could do for myself right now that would make me feel just a bit more at ease? Because look, if you're overwhelmed, if your physiology is saying, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do this, if the world is too much to bear, if you're burned out and stressed and exhausted and there's just too much bullshit, sometimes you need to explode through that, right? Sometimes there needs to really muster up something from within you. And other times, it's just a matter of withdrawing. It's just a matter of giving yourself the care that you deserve. It's a matter of listening to the signals that your body is giving you. Those aren't your body sending you signals. That is the deepest, most fundamental, that's the layer of you that has the most primacy in the world. Because that is how you're going to engage with everything else in the world. Everything you're going to do through your body, as your body. So listen to those signals. Take a moment right now. Self-preservation is need number one. Jessica, you're right. Yeah, that is fundamental need number one. If you feel threatened, if you feel unsafe, if you feel as if you can barely scrape by and keep yourself going, live into this question for a year and then get back to me next year and then we'll talk. But like, what is one thing I could do right now? The smallest possible step I could take to give myself a greater sense of support. In doing so, maybe it's as simple as I'm going to sit on a yoga block for right now. I'm going to prop myself up rather than sit on the floor. I'm going to sit here and talk with you. Whoa, instantly my pelvis is underneath me, and right now it's like, again, you can hear the change in my voice. As soon as I give myself that support, I am much more resourced, much more able to be engaged here as we're doing this. And it changes something about the way I carry myself. Now again, when you change the way you carry yourself, if you support yourself, give yourself more ease, resource yourself more effectively, it's not like you are hoisting yourself up. You are layering a foundation that you can yield into. And when you can yield into a foundation, when you can sink your roots so fucking deep that no one can stop you, no one can touch you, people can rail against you, you become big enough to handle whatever the world is going to whatever the world is going to put on your plate at that point. That's how big you want to be, because that's how big you need to be to make this change that you want to see in the world around you. And I don't care if that change is you want to model some behavior for your kids, show them what's possible. I don't care if that's a change you want to make in your community. If you can make yourself big enough that change just ripples out from you, that's what we're going for. So fine, what support do you need to make that happen? What do you need in order to feel more secure, to feel more resourced, to feel more safe in your own skin? That's step one, safety. I talk about kind of the traffic light of our nervous system function. Safety is the red light. You do not get to pass go if you feel unsafe. Now after that, there's function, right? There's the ability to get from point A to point B, to do the things you need to do. But after that, if that's all you do, that's all most people do, is just go through the motions day after day. It's like Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. They just repeat on a loop for years and years and years. Function is good, but it's not enough. You need safety, and you need function, and then you need variety to really thrive, to really live into what your nervous system and what you are truly capable of. You need variety. You need novelty. You need new stimuli in your life. Yeah, Jessica, time to wake up, living in all of that. Absolutely. So the catch is, that's how you thrive. That's how you become the most of yourself, is by introducing more novelty, by introducing more variety. But you can only do that when you've got that foundation of function in place, and you can only do that when you've got that foundation of safety underneath that. So what do you need to do in order to bring to life this big you? There's big work that needs to be done, and it's going to take a big you in order to do it. And in order to do that, in order to bring that to life, you must work at the foundational level of the body. That has a primacy that none of the other head games can even touch. I don't care how much positive thinking you want to do. If that makes you feel better, great. But at a certain point, you've got to get out of your head and into your body. Because that is how, when you change your body, change your perception, that's how you change the world. Because if you can get this out of your head and into your body, that's what fundamentally changes the apparatus with which you actually sense the world. That's how you literally change the way you see the world. And when you do that, it opens up a whole just universe of opportunities, right? Again, the gal I was talking to earlier said it's like a quantum leap. Yes, it is, because there are whole realms of options that you couldn't even touch. Like this guy who just decided to get started today. He's like, man, I want to take these road trips across the country. I want to go out there. I want to see this. I want to see that. I want to take my daughter to go visit all these places. Like, if I felt safe, if I could do this, if I could get out of pain, the world would open up. And it's like, yes, it would. Yes, it will. But it takes a choice. Again, there is blame, and that is not what this is. You are not responsible for all of the bullshit you've lived through. You have no say over gravity. You have no say over the culture you're brought into. You have no say really over the social dynamics of your youth, of your adolescence, of your childhood. But right here and right now, you do have the responsibility to yourself to make that change. You have the opportunity to bring this big you to life. You have the opportunity to grow beyond all the petty bullshit, You have an opportunity to get so big and so deeply rooted that, again, whatever life brings your way, it's like, dodge that. Like, you can take whatever punches come your way. Look at the metaphors that we use. I was talking to this guy about this too. He's like, yeah, that really stood out to me listening to you talk about that. Like, when you have your own back, when you grow a backbone, like, our whole cultural lexicon is full of these embodied metaphors. We roll with the punches, we find our footing, we stand our ground, we grow a backbone. Listen to all of them and then embody them. Think about what you need. If you need more strength, go pick up something heavy. If you need more balance, practice balancing. Like, these are really simple things you can do to get started with it. Listen to the way that you talk about these things, because that's going to reveal a lot about the way that you perceive these things. And then don't just listen to it, and don't just think that changing the way you talk about it is going to make a change. This is an embodied process. Again, you have to change the way, quite literally, you use yourself in the world. That means the way that you habitually sit, stand, walk, talk. Good God, if you go back to some of my videos from 3 years ago, 5 years ago, like, whew. I was a very different boy back then, very different monkey. My voice is a little higher, and you could tell that I wasn't quite fully there, and there was something going on, but like, through this somatic practice, you really do get into yourself. And yeah, Jessica said, it's like reprogramming your brain. It kind of is, yeah, quite literally. Like, you change, let's look at it this way. It's not exactly reprogramming your brain. At a certain point, it's like because I think brain is just a little narrow view. So like, yes, the intention behind that, but like, we can refine that a bit too. Because you don't just have a brain that is like the centralized intelligence. Yes, we are our cephalized animals. We've gone through the process of cephalization, which means most of our neurological activity, all of our teleceptors, the things that we use to perceive the world, they're clustered up here, right? So this has a huge amount of primacy. Your ability to look and turn and respond to the world is enormous. But we have this distributed intelligence through the body. So this isn't just, yes, reprogramming the brain is part of it, but this isn't just the brain. This is your entire embodied self. This is your whole neurological apparatus, which is distributed throughout every part of you. All of the sensory neurons that are communicating this information about the external world, about your internal state as well. And all of the motor neurons that are allowing you to move and engage and relate and talk and hug and whatever it is you do. This is about, I don't even like that. I have trouble with the programming and rewiring, and we've got to find some way to talk about it too, but even those seem like artifacts of kind of the mechanistic dualism of body and mind, separating like the physical stuff and the thinking stuff. So even more than like programming, this is about, it's about relearning the potential you had before all of life's bullshit narrowed your lens of what you're capable of. It's about finding sort of, a mentor of mine says, it's getting back to the face you had before you were born. All of the ease that was there. The whole world of options and opportunities that were available. Jessica says, ooh, a big long thing. Let's see. Reprogramming, in a sense, we're breaking down constructs. Yes, okay, yeah, exactly. And you're right, like, we've got to have some way to talk about it. I'm a word nerd. I think the way we talk about, like, just, at least for myself, I find, especially in the online space, this forces me to be a bit more precise with my language, because if I just type something out, someone's going to misinterpret it. So yeah, cool. I dig it. But yes, again, we are shaped by our whole lifetime's worth of experiences. All of those experiences have shaped the way we respond emotionally, whether we lash out, whether we close off, whether we're able to be responsive, communicative, creative, improvisational. We're shaped in terms of the way we move too, right? Like, the ideal, the highest we can aim for is to be able to engage fully in the world without any hesitation or without any preparation. Like, I want to be able to move from this position up to stand without needing a whole lot going on. I want to be able to jump up and engage in the world, whether I need to respond to something behind me, whether someone walks in the door here, I want to see who it is. And I don't want to have to say, what's what's going on here? Oh, geez. Here I go. No, I don't want that bullshit limitation. Like, again, you are far more capable than you realize. The way you see yourself now has been shaped by all of your life. So here's the big question. We'll give you another question to live into. Do you want to choose your habits and your history? Or do you want to choose your future and your possibility? You get one. You don't get both. You can choose those limits. You can choose that history, or you can choose the possibility. It's a choice we have to make every day. It's a choice we have to recommit to every day. But know that what you see right now is not all that there is. It's not all that you're capable of. Think back to before you knew how to ride a bike. When you're first learning how to ride a bike, before you've had those embodied experiences, before you have those experiences, those physical experiences that teach your body something about how to organize, riding a bike is crazy. And of course you fall and you skin your knee and you try again, but you don't quit. And if you think back even further, at one point you were a little blob of a baby who couldn't do much of anything, right? But through iterative experiences, embodied experiences, through movement, through awareness, through sensing and feeling and acting, through all of this, you've learned everything you've learned now. So, the question is, what are you going to learn next? There is a whole world of possibilities, and it is yours if you can find some greater sense of self, if you can tap into the embodied experience of what that big you, what that future you, how would that person sit and stand and walk and talk? And maybe you don't have the tools at your disposal right now in order to fully engage that, in which case leverage them, ask for help. That was the hardest thing for me, is coming to terms with the fact that I wasn't the smartest person in the world, that I didn't know all of the answers for myself, that I did in fact need help. Whew, that was tough. So I hear you. Like, especially if you're kind of at the top of your game now, it's easy to look around and think like, I am weak if I ask for help. I got here so far, I can get through the next, I just need to get over it and dig deep and push hard and all of that. Again, nice cultural programming there. Your cultural programming is showing, right? Like all of these messages that you've taken in and forgotten that they're not yours. They're things you've swallowed from your parents. They're things you've swallowed from society and culture. They're the best that you've known how to do so far. But for the work that you want to do moving forward, it's going to take something different. So if you would like some help with that, let me know. Shoot me a message. If you would like to try and do this yourself, at least do so intelligently. Like, live into the question for a year and commit for a year. One more side note, then we'll come back to it. Commit for a period of time. Like, I always, when I think about the work I do, the life that I live, all of it, it's from the patience of bones and the possibility of synapses. And I don't know where that phrase bubbled into my mind from. If it came from somewhere, let me know. I don't remember reading it anywhere. But those two things are how I work and how I live. The patience of bones, knowing that your skeletal structure can change, and it does change, over the period of years. If you had to look ahead to what you were doing for the next 7 years, what would you do? What would you do for 7 years? What could you do for 7 years, right? Because the change, the big work, the big you, this is a process. This is not a kind of thing. This is not a quick fix. So cultivate the patience of bones, but do not think that you are damned to a lifetime of difficult work, because that's where the possibility of synapses comes in. As much as the significant structural change, the skeletal change, that will take years. The structure of your life will change over the span of years, but your ability to respond and engage and to learn, that's the possibility of synapses, and that can happen in a moment. That can happen in a matter of minutes. There's a woman I worked with who, for the first time in 65 years, felt safe after just a week's worth of work together. She'd gone 65 years never feeling safe. In a week, she had it. And it wasn't like a cognitive, I'm safe, yeah, because like you can do that, but really, how's that working out for you? For her, it was a deep-seated, embodied sense of, oh my God, I can let all of that stuff go. I don't need to run. I don't need to ready myself for a fight. I don't need all of this. You could see it in her face. It was really profound. It was really beautiful to see that happen. So think, the patience of bones and the possibility of synapses. Be in it for the long haul. Live into that commitment for the long haul and trust that you are capable of making rapid changes along the way, of exponentially unfolding opportunities and possibilities of how you sit and stand and walk and talk and what you do and how you engage. You can make rapid changes, but do hold that long-term commitment. So again, if you want help with this, let me know, shoot me a message, let's talk through it and see if this is the right fit. If you want to go about it yourself, as I mentioned, do it intelligently. 365 pages, who's up for it? Write it out on the top of every page, and every day ask yourself, how could I give myself a bit more support? What's the smallest possible step I could take to give myself a bit greater sense of ease, a bit greater sense of resourcing? How can I tend to the soil of myself, the soil of my life? Do that for a year. Every single day, live into that question and your world will open up. And then if you do that for a year, send me the world's best testimonial in a year. But if you'd like to make a little quicker change, again, let's talk through it. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful. This was just like bubbling up for me and I couldn't not talk through this stuff. Because I will say it's really helpful for me just to articulate these ideas as well. When you change your body, you change your world. Not for the fact that you got six-pack abs and all of that, although sure, that's fun too, like go for it. But because of the fact that you've changed the way that you perceive the world. You've changed the underlying apparatus through which you sense and engage in the world around you. When you change this and get out of your head and into your body, when you connect to your roots, it is a quantum leap. So anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. We'll talk soon.